The rain never stopped on Velos 3. It fell like ash from a broken sky. Heavy clouds hung over the dark mountains, as if the world itself was tired of breathing. Commander Jace Rourke crouched near the ridge watching the slaver outpost through. His visor thermal scans showed weak life signs inside. No guards outside, no patrols moving. Too quiet for a base known for trading rare species and cyber-enhanced prisoners. Jace knew something was wrong, but his orders were clear. Go in, take what? Evidence he could rescue anyone alive and get out before anyone noticed. He tapped his wristpad and slipped down the hill toward the compound. His boots made no sound on the muddy ground. This was what he was trained for: stealth precision, no emotion. Only results inside the compound. The walls were cold metal covered in grime. Lights flickered. Some were broken. The place looked abandoned. But the sensors didn't lie. Something or someone was still in here. He moved from corridor to corridor past empty cages. Some were open. Some were scorched. He stepped over the burnt skeleton of a droid still holding a shock stick. He found the first survivor near the lower wing, a man with cybernetic implants half torn out. He was shaking, eyes wide, mouth moving, but no voice. Yes gave him a stim and kept going. The deeper he went, the colder it became. His breath turned to fog in the air. He adjusted his helmet. Even the temperature controls struggled to keep up. Then he saw hair in a small chamber. At the end of a broken hallway, a girl sat on the floor with her back against the wall. Chains were wrapped around her wrists and ankles. A metal collar circled her neck. She looked no older than 16 in human years. Her skin pale blue, hair like liquid silver flowing down her shoulders. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She only stared at him. Jace stepped forward slowly. She didn't move, didn't speak. He scanned her with his wristpad. No known species, no records, no ID. The collar was fused into her neck. Old tech, not from this century, not even from this side of the galaxy. He spoke calmly, told her he was here to help. She said nothing. He knelt beside her and reached for the collar. Her eyes locked with his. There was no fear, only something deeper, something waiting. The collar was cold metal, smooth like stone. He used a precision laser to break the seal. A click echoed through the chamber, and then everything changed. Walls shook, lights burst. His helmet went dark for 2 seconds. When it came back online, she was standing. The collar fell to the ground in 2 pieces. Smoke rose from it. The air felt charged, as if lightning had just passed through. Jace stood and reached for his weapon, but didn't raise it. She didn't attack. She didn't run. She looked at the broken collar, then at him. Her voice was soft but steady, her words slow and clear. "I'm not a slave." Jace said nothing. He didn't know what to say. She stepped forward and looked around the room. Her eyes scanned the walls as if searching for something. Then she touched the metal door with her bare hand. It opened without sound. No key, no code. Just touch. Jace followed her through the door. Every part of him told him to call for backup, to leave. But something about her kept him there. She moved like she had walked these halls before. Every turn she took was with purpose. Every step led somewhere. He asked her name. She didn't answer. He asked what the collar was. She paused, then said one word: seal. He didn't understand. She turned to him and spoke again, her voice clearer now. Still calm. "It wasn't to bind me, it was to bind what I carry." Jace felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. He asked what she meant. She kept walking. More lights flickered overhead. Doors opened before she touched them. Security systems ignored her presence. The building was reacting to her like she was part of it or its creator. They entered a large chamber filled with old machines, dust thick in the air, broken monitors, the dead wires hanging from the ceiling. She stood in the center, raised her hands and whispered something in a language Jace didn't recognize. Screens lit up, old files flickered to life. Images of alien tech, diagrams of the same collar she wore, notes written in human language about containment. Jace stepped forward to read, but the files vanished as quickly as they came. She turned to him and spoke again, this time with a look in her eyes that didn't belong to a child. "They feared me, so they locked me away. Now you've opened the door. Before he could ask another question, the walls rumbled again. From far above came a low mechanical hum. Something had been activated. The girl looked up. They're coming now. She walked past him, no longer waiting for permission, no longer needing rescue. Jace followed her, not as her savior, but as someone who had just unleashed something the galaxy tried to forget, and now there was no going back. Jace had followed many before, leaders, orders, enemies, but never something like her. She walked with no fear through the ruins of the slaver base. No map, no hesitation. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, but she didn't flinch, like she didn't even feel it. Just kept his weapon ready, not because he expected her to attack, but because everything around them felt wrong. The metal walls were humming soft at first, then louder, as if the whole structure was reacting to her presence. She stopped at a sealed door with warning signs burned into the frame, hazard symbols from a dozen languages, some of them human, some unknown. She placed her hand flat against the door. Her skin shimmered with light, not from outside, but from somewhere within her. The door opened. Inside was a chamber made of smooth black stone. Unlike the rest of the compound, it looked untouched by time. Clean, silent, preserved. At the center was a round pedestal with metal veins stretching across the floor like roots above. It hovered a single cube. No chains, no support, just floating in midair, pulsing with a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. She stepped forward. The light from her body grew stronger. The cube reacted, spun slowly, then opened into 4 smaller pieces. Inside was a shard of glass glowing blue. From within, Jace watched in silence. His instincts screamed that this was not meant to be touched. Not by her, not by anyone. But she did not touch it. She stood in front of it, closed her eyes, and breathed. For the first time since he met her, the entire room responded. The walls lit up, symbols appeared, floating words in the air that looked human but shifted between languages too fast to read. She opened her eyes. I remember now. Jace asked her what she remembered. She looked at him and spoke slowly. My name is not spoken, it is sung. You would not understand it. He asked again, who built her? Why was she chained? She turned and walked around the cube, her voice calm but heavier now, wiser. They feared what they couldn't control. They called me weapon. They called me mistake. They said my presence would break the balance. Jace didn't like riddles. He was a soldier, not a philosopher. He asked her what she was, not who. What she answered without looking at him. I am the last echo of the first flame. I am what they made to guard against the dark. But they could not tell the flame from the fire, so they sealed me with silence and forgot my name. Suddenly the cube shut itself. The lights vanished. Room went dark. Only her body still glowed. She walked past him. Jace turned to follow, but then as Cum's crackled, a voice broke through. Not his team, not base command. It was a whisper. Not meant for speaking. It crawled through his headset like wind through bones. She is awake. Seal is broken. Eliminate the asset. Jace ripped off the headset. The voice still echoed in his ears. Not electronic, something deeper, inside his own mind. He looked at her. She stared at him with calm eyes, not angry, not afraid. Like she expected it. They will come for me, and they will come for you, because you touched the seal. Jace stepped back. He was trained for fear, for pain, for battle, but this was something else. This was truth unfolding like a story written long before he was born. He asked why she let him remove the collar. She gave a small smile. Not cruel, not kind, just knowing. You were the first who looked at me and didn't see property. You saw a person, that was enough. The ground trembled, distant footsteps, not human, too heavy, too perfect, machines. Marching. The girl tilted her head, listening. They are close. Jace pulled his rifle. He scanned for threats. Nothing on the tracker, but the air itself felt thick, alive. He looked at her. Her glow was fading. She looked tired now, or maybe restrained again, like something inside her was holding back. He asked what she needed. Her reply came without pause. To reach the stars where my kind once lived, to find the memory that was taken, to finish the message I was born to deliver. Jace didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing: if they wanted her, they would have to go through him. She looked at him with something that might have been gratitude, might have been something older. They will call you traitor, but history will remember you as key. Before Jace could speak, a wall behind them exploded inward. Metal shards rained across the room. Through the smoke stepped a tall figure made of chrome and shadow. No face, no name, only purpose. The girl stepped in front of Jace. She raised her hand not to fight, but to speaking, a voice filled with thunder and wind. She said one word, stop, and the machine froze in place, not broken, not disabled, just silent. The girl turned to Jace. Again, we don't have much time. And with that, she began to walk, not as a prisoner, not as a lost child, but as something ancient, something powerful. Finally awake, Jace followed her. This time with no doubt. He didn't know where they were going, but he knew the galaxy would never be the same again. The tunnels below the compound twisted like veins under skin, old metal walls cracked with age. Lights flickered in rhythm with her steps. Jace followed behind her, his rifle ready, his mind racing. Every sensor in his gear was failing. No signal, no map, no connection to his team. That was like the tech around them had given up, or worse, it had been silenced. The girl walked without fear. She moved faster now, like something was chasing her, or like something had finally woken up, and she could feel it coming. Jace asked what was following them. She stopped in the middle of a hallway and placed her hand on the wall. The metal around her pulsed like it was alive. They were built to contain me. Now they hunt without thought, without pause, machines without name or soul. Jace looked behind them. The corridor was empty, but the air told a different story. A low vibration crawled through the floor, the kind of sound that lives under hearing. Not loud, but it made his spine feel cold. He raised his rifle. She placed her hand on the barrel and pushed it down. That won't stop them. Then the light changed. A sudden flash behind them, not white, not red, but pure silence made visibly. Jace turned and saw a figure step through the wall, not from a door, not from a crack. It simply phased into view like a memory becoming real. The machine was tall, its body smooth and silver. No joints, no weapons in sight. But Jace felt its purpose like a weight pressing against his chest. The girl stared at it. Her eyes glowed again, but not bright, not fierce, controlled. The machine didn't speak. It didn't need toy charge, it just moved without thinking. He fired a full burst. The bullets hit the machine, but passed through it like smoke made of glass. The girl raised her hand. Her fingers curved, and the walls shook. The machine stopped, frozen in place, then turned its head without moving its body. She spoke a single word in a language older than anything Jace had ever heard. The machine vanished, not destroyed, not broken, just erased. Jace was breathing hard. He had seen war, he had seen death, but this was something else. She turned to him and spoke softly. There are more. They kept moving deeper into the old system. Jace saw signs of something long forgotten. Human symbols mixed with alien markings, not slaver tech, not pirate junk research stations, abandoned labs. All left behind like someone had buried this place on purpose. He asked her why this place was built. She said it wasn't built, it was uncovered. And then sealed. Your people found something they couldn't understand, so they wrapped it in fear and called it dangerous. They built prisons where temples once stood. They reached a massive hall with broken towers inside, like a city buried. Underground cables hung like vines. Old drones floated lifeless in the air. Jace looked around in disbelief. This wasn't a slaver base. This was a ruin, a history lost in shadows. The girl walked to a cracked platform and placed both hands on the stone. It lit up with her touch. Symbols rose into the air, images of machines of war, of fire falling from the sky. She turned to Jace. There was a war before history, not between races, but between purpose and control. I was made as balance, not as weapon. But those who feared balance chose silence over truth. Jace asked again who made her. She looked at him with sadness. I was born from many hands, some human, some not. I carry their voices, but I do not carry their fear. A sound broke the stillness. Not metal, not machine footsteps, but not one set. Dozens. Machines just turned toward the echo. Figures began to appear through the dust machines, like the one before, moving without noise. Their eyes like burning glass. The girl took Jace's hand. Her touch warm, steady. Don't run. They expect fear. Give them memory instead. She raised her free hand and sang. Sound wasn't music, but it moved through the air like a wave. The machines paused one by one. They froze in place as if hearing something. From long ago, some stepped back. Some lowered their heads. One of them fell to its knees. Jace stared at them. The most advanced tech he had ever seen. And they were bowing. She lowered her hand. The machines faded like mist touched by sunlight. Jace turned to her, his voice quiet now. What are you really? She looked at him with calm fire in her eyes. I am not a weapon. I am not a girl. I am the part of truth they couldn't erase. And now that truth is walking again. Jace checked his ammo. He didn't know where they were going or how many more would try to stop them. But he knew this. They were not running anymore. They were headed into the heart of what everyone tried to forget, and whatever waited ahead, it had already heard them coming. The corridor opened into a massive dome buried deep beneath the surface. Broken staircases lined the walls. Dead screens blinked faintly like tired eyes. And above them, suspended in the air, floated the shattered remains of something that once held power. Jace stepped forward slowly. His boots echoed through the silence. The girl followed without speaking. They had left the machines behind, but not the fear. Not the questions. He could feel it in his chest. Something in this place had not slept. It had waited. At the center of the dome was a sunken platform. Old consoles surrounded it, chairs still in place. Like the people who worked here had vanished in an instant. Jace wiped the dust from one of the control panels. Human design, old Alliance tech, maybe 2 centuries old. Maybe older. The girl touched the central column. Lights sparked to life. Data screens hovered in the air. Lines of broken code, fragments of old messages, and one word pulsing in red: project. Ember. Jace leaned closer. He tapped the side of his visor. His system translated what it could: field notes, energy readings, warnings. Test subjects showed rapid evolution. Language adaptation in hours. Weapon response systems triggered by emotion containment. Advised, do not allow contact with origin shard. He looked at her. She was reading too, not confused, not shocked, only quiet. He asked her if she was part of Project Ember. She nodded once, then turned her eyes to the main feed. A voice began to play, broken by static, but still human. This is Dr. Morel, lead on Ember. We've made a mistake. She wasn't born. She was shaped. We thought we were building a failsafe, but we built a mirror, one that reflects more than we understood. The recording crackled, then continued. We sealed her under Protocol 13. She's not a threat by design, only by response. She mirrors the fear you give her. She returns the violence she receives. She learns faster than anything we've seen. If you're hearing this, do not break the seal. The voice faded. Jay stood still, the words circling in his mind. She wasn't designed to fight. She was designed to react, to evolve, to reflect. He turned to her, his voice low. What have they done to you? Her eyes were glass now, not from tears, but from memory. They erased my name. They took my voice, then gave me a cage and called it safety. But even in silence I listened. I remembered. She walked to a broken chair near the far wall. She touched it gently, as if someone she knew had once sat there. A Jace scanned the data again. The files were corrupted, but one thing stood out: the shard. He asked her what it was. The origin shard. She looked up at the dark ceiling, then at her own hands. It was a core of thought, not matter, a seed of creation left by the ones who shaped the stars. Your people found a fragment of it, and in fear tried to control it. They used it to create me, to copy the spark, but the shard was never meant to obey. Jace remembered the glowing cube, the strange glass inside. He had seen it react to her. She was not just connected to the shard. She was made from. I've asked what happened to the rest of it. She stood. They tried to break it into pieces, but pieces do not forget where they belong. The other shards still call scattered across systems buried beneath silence. Suddenly the dome lights dimmed. An alert flashed across the console. Unregistered signal detected. Tracking initiatives pulled up the map. A small object was moving fast, closing in on their position. The girl stepped forward. Her glow returned brighter than before. "They found us again," Jace asked, who she answered without fear. "The ones who fear memory. The ones who call themselves order, but only bring erasure." Outside the dome, the ground rumbled. Not machines this time, but a ship old, covered in stealth tech built not to be seen, but to erase what should never be remembered. The ship released a wave, not a weapon. A pulse. Jace fell to his knees. His systems crashed. His vision went black for a second. When he looked up, she was standing tall, her hands stretched toward the sky. Her voice no longer soft, she was singing again. The sound pushed back the pulse. Her song became a wall, not of fire, but of memory. The ship above began to flicker. Its weapons stalled, its engines stuttered, its systems caught in a storm of sound and truth. Jace stood beside her. He aimed his weapon at the sky, not because he thought he could stop the ship, but because she was no longer alone. The data from the dead had spoken. She was not a mistake. She was the answer they buried, and now the silence was ending. The ship was gone, vanished into the clouds like a shadow hiding from light. But the dust it stirred still floated through the air like smoke after a quiet fire. Jace stood at the edge of the platform, his armor covered in ash, his pulse still high. The girl was kneeling beside a broken panel. Her fingers moved across the surface, drawing symbols in the dust. She had not spoken since the ship retreated. Her glow was dimmer now, not weak, just quiet. Jace walked over and asked if she was all right. She nodded, but didn't meet his eyes. Her voice came slowly. "Every time I remember, it hurts." Jace sat down beside her, not as a soldier, not as a protector, just as someone who had seen enough to know when silence meant something more. He asked what she had seen when the ship appeared. She answered without turning. "They came before, not to study me, not to understand, but to erase everything connected to what I am. They call it mercy, I call it fear." Jace had heard of black operations, of quiet missions that never made it into records, but this was deeper, older, the kind of secret that lived inside the bones of empires. He asked who gave the order, who sent those machines, who built the ship. She drew one more shape into the dust, a symbol that looked human, but not modern. A triangle surrounded by 3 rings, each with a broken mark at the edge. Jace recognized it. It was the crest of an ancient Earth faction, one that had disappeared more than a century ago. The Silent Wing officially disbanded, unofficially buried. They had been known for one purpose, to remove what was never meant to be known. She looked up at him, her eyes calm again. "They are not protecting the galaxy. They are protecting their lie." Jace stood. The dust around his boots shifted, and then he heard Ida whisper, not from hair, not from his combs, not from any speaker. It came from the walls, from the dust itself, words not made by mouth, but by memory. He turned. The room behind them was glowing faintly, and then the lights shifted, revealing figures standing in silence. They were not alive, not fully holograms projected from the old systems. Ghosts of the past speaking again. A woman appeared first, clothed in long robes, half her face hidden by data streams, her voice steady and cold. "If she awakens, erase the chamber, erase the name, erase the seed." Another voice joined her, a man in uniform, older style, eyes filled with fear. "She learns, she adapts, she reflects. If even one shard finds her, we cannot predict the result." Jace stepped closer. The girl did not move. She had heard these voices before. They had once stood around her, not to help, but to judge, to decide her fate before she even spoke. Another recording played, this one more broken, but stronger. "She chose not to harm. We made her fear us. We called her dangerous because we could not control her. We failed the test." The lights faded. The figures vanished. Only dust remained. The girl stood slowly. She looked at the place where the voices had echoed and said nothing. Jace asked what test they meant. She answered with care. "They found the shard, not knowing it was alive. It reached for them, not to conquer, but to offer a bond. They rejected it. They broke it. then created me as a vessel to carry what they feared to hold. Jace tried to understand. He asked if she was a weapon. She shook her head. No, I am a question, and they were afraid of the answer. Silence returned, but it did not feel empty. The dust beneath them shifted again, and a new light appeared in the floor. It did not feel empty. The dust beneath them shifted again, and a new light appeared in the floor. A map built from memory, projected by the ancient systems, showed other locations. Other shards hidden across planets and moons forgotten by time. Girl pointed at one far in the corner of the map. A signal pulsed there, slow, steady. She is calling. Me, Jace asked who the girl replied. Another like me buried alone, still waiting for her seal to break before he could speak again. His visor blinked red. New signal detected. Incoming drop unit. Military signature. Earth origin. High clearance. Jace looked at her. She had already turned toward the exit. They found this place again. We cannot stay. Jace followed, but part of him stayed behind. A part that knew he was no longer a soldier on a mission. He was part of something else now, not just a rescue, not just a choice. He was walking inside a story that had been silenced for generations, and each step was writing it again. They moved through the hollow tunnels beneath the ruins. The light behind them faded as the systems powered down. Even the dust seemed quieter now, as if the chamber had spoken its last truth. Jace led with weapon raised. The girl followed closer. Steps no longer quiet. Each footfall left behind a soft trail of glowing symbols, like memory bleeding through the floor. He noticed it first. Her shadow didn't match her shape anymore. It moved with her, but it pulsed with a second rhythm, a second heartbeat. Something underneath. He didn't say anything at first. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe it was exhaustion. But the more they walked, the more he felt it. She was changing. They stopped at a locked exit gate buried in overgrowth and soil. Old vines hung from the ceiling. Thin roots broke through the cracks in the walls. Jace reached to cut the vines, but the girl stepped forward and raised her hand. The vines moved away, not burned, not destroyed. They simply shifted as if they recognized her. The gate opened with a long breath of air. The world outside was cold and dim. A wide canyon stretched under a sky of pale green. Storm clouds drifted far above, but no rain fell. They stepped out together. Just scanned for enemies. His visor picked up heat signatures in the sky. 3 small ships moving in formation, scouting, not attacking. Not yet. The girl stood at the edge of the cliff. She closed her eyes and the air around her shimmered, her rose slightly lifted by something unseen. Hands began to glow, not with power, but with memory. Jace stepped beside her. He asked what she was feeling. She opened her eyes. They were brighter now, but something was missing. I can feel them, the others, pieces of me scattered like broken stars. They are waking too, but not like me. They wake in fear. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, she looked like she didn't want this. He asked what would happen if they found the other shards. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, if the wrong hands touch them, they will not speak, they will defend. They will become what they were never meant to be. Jace understood. These shards were not just energy. They were pieces of thought, of choice, of something the galaxy had buried. The girl took a deep breath, and her body shifted again. Her arms became threaded with lines of light, like veins. But they moved, not in blood, but in patterns. The sky above responded. Clouds parted slowly, as if pulled by the same force that flowed through her. Just stepped back slightly. He was not afraid of her, but he was beginning to see the truth. The collar had not just locked away power, it had held back a being still becoming, and now that seal was breaking further. Suddenly, his comes sparked. A new voice came through. Commander Rourke, you are ordered to stand down. Surrender the girl immediately. You are acting against Earth Protocol Directive 9. He stared at the signal, encrypted high level. It came from deep command voices he had never heard before, voices with authority that lived in the shadows. The girl heard it too. She turned to him slowly, her face calm, but her eyes filled with something sharp. They never wanted peace, only silence. He raised his weapon, not to use it, but to show them, he had chosen a side. The voice repeated, "Return the subject, you are not authorized to proceed." Jace turned off the signal. The girl walked to him. She looked tired now, not from running, but from remembering. "I was made from something no one could hold, and they thought chains would be enough." She looked at her hands, and for a moment, Jace saw her hesitate. What if I become what they feared? What if I lose myself? He stepped forward, placed his hand over hers. "Then I'll remind you who you are." Her glow calmed the storm above, stilled, but then the ground beneath them cracked. A shape rose from the canyon below, a large black vessel. No signal, no lights. It didn't fly, it floated like it was not using gravity at all. The girl stepped back, her face pale. "That is not from Earth, that is not from this time." Jace aimed his rifle, but something told him bullets would not matter here. The vessel opened, a thin figure stepped out, wrapped in robes of metal and shadow. It had no face, no voice, only presence. The girl whispered, "One of the forgotten, they served the first flame." But when it faded, they fell into silence. Jace asked what it wanted. She looked at the figure, then at the stars above. "It wants to see if I remember who I am, and if I forget, it will not ask again." She stepped forward alone. Jace called out. But she didn't stop. This was her test, and if she passed, nothing would stop what came next. The seal was nearly gone now, and with every memory she found, a part of the galaxy stirred with her. She stood at the edge of the canyon. The dark figure waited below, its form still, its presence heavier than gravity. It did not speak, it did not move, but the silence said everything. Jess watched from above, his weapon lowered, his hands clenched. Wanted to move, to stop her, but he knew this moment was not his. The girl stepped forward. Her glow grew brighter, her feet lifted from the ground. Not in flight, but in awakening. The canyon lit with soft blue light. Symbols appeared in the air. They circled her body like forgotten language returning home. The figure raised one hand. She stopped in front of it. Their energies met, not in battle, but in recognition. The figure opened its hand. A small fragment floated above its palm. The shard, another piece, another memory. It moved toward her. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched it, time around them slowed. Images filled the sky. Not from screens, not from devices, but from the stars themselves. This saw a galaxy before war, before fear, worlds connected by light, by knowledge, by song. He saw her not as a child, not as a prisoner, but as a design made from the will of many races, built not for destruction, but for protection. She had been created as a balance, not to rule, not to kneel, but to carry a memory strong enough to hold peace until fear broke the circle, until silence took the lead. The vision faded. Her body hovered higher. The lines of light across her arms now reached toward the sky. Her eyes glowed with the color of stars being born. Jace stepped closer to the canyon edge. The air felt heavier, like something ancient had opened its eyes. Ships appeared in the distance. Earth ships, sleek armed, prepared to erase everything they did not understand. One voice came through the "Come, this is command. Vessel horizon, surrender the girl, or be fired upon. You have 10 seconds. Jace opened the channel. His voice calm, his choice clear. "I will not surrender what you never owned." The ship gave no warning, no answer. A missile launched. It crossed the sky like a scar, burning white. But before it reached them, the girl raised her hand. Light around her pulsed once, and the missile stopped. It hung in the air, frozen, then turned into dust. Jace stared, not in fear, but in awe. She turned to face the ship. Her voice filled the canyon, the sky, every frequency, every heart. "I was made by many hands. I was sealed by fear. I was called weapon. I was called threat. But I am not your fear, and I am not your slave." The Earth ships held their position. Scanners scrambled, engines stalled. Her voice continued, "You chained me with silence. Now I return with memory, not to destroy, but to remind you of what you chose to forget." The figure beside her lowered its head. It stepped back and faded into light. The shard now pulsed inside her chest. Not a weapon, not a core, but a key. She turned to Jace, her voice softer now. "You were the first to see me, not as property, not as danger, but as someone lost. Jace lowered his weapon. He stepped toward her. "What will you do now?" She looked to the stars above. Find the others, not to bring war, but to offer choice. She reached out her hand. Jace placed something inside a band from his own wrist. Worn, simple, human, not a collar. Not a command, just a gift. She placed it around her wrist. It glowed with her touch. Then she stepped into the air, her body rising. No engines, no sound. The ships did not fire. They could not. She passed through the clouds, leaving only a trail of soft light behind. Jace stood alone in the canyon. The wind now still, the silence now peaceful. He looked up, knowing that what had risen was not a girl, not a weapon, not a myth, but a voice the stars had waited to hear again. And somewhere beyond the systems, beyond the forgotten ruins, others like her were waking, not as soldiers, but as truth.